Hi, everybody. Welcome to month number 5 of our Leading Teen Writers monthly writing workshop. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let's go ahead and get started because there's a lot of writing that I want to do today, and I want to get you guys introduced to a concept that's going to make you more conscious as you write each sentence of your paragraphs. Oh. Okay. To write is not that hard. Just put some words on a piece of paper. But do you have your own style? Do you have your own style as a writer? It's a very advanced thing to have. It takes a lot of practice. If I look at someone's writing and there's no name at the top, would I be able to tell that it was you, Chloe? Or you, Tanisha? Or you, Yuna? Or you, Michael? Or would I just say, oh, that just looks like every other person's writing? How do you create your own style? Well, there's a lot of millions of different ways to do that, but one of the ways we're going to practice today is writing sentences that have more variety. And if you're someone whose sentences don't just follow the same old pattern, the same old structure as everybody else's sentences, then you're starting to create and craft your own unique style and your own unique voice. So we're going to practice a lot of different ways to create variety with the structure of your sentence. So for those of you who've been paying attention in any of my grammar lessons, in our private lessons, it will really help because I'm going to be using words like prepositional phrases, adverbs, complex sentences, adverb clauses. If you, I'm pretty sure I've worked with most of you on these things. If not, we're going to learn a little bit about that today. So, what's the most common sentence that we use? Our most common type of sentence, you can do this sentence in your sleep. You probably use this sentence a million times a day. It goes subject plus verb plus object. Ew, this is sounding very grammar-y, and I know you guys, probably it's not your favorite subject, but it can help you out a lot in your creative style. So a subject can be either a noun, a proper noun, or a pronoun. And often our sentences will start with the subject. And then we have the verb and object. Okay, example, Emily loves cookies. Emily loves cookies. Emily is the subject, and that begins the sentence. The sentence begins with Emily because it's who the sentence is about. She's doing the action. But all too often, students' writing barely breaks from this predictable structure. Now, I'm not saying that about you guys. I'm just saying all your students somewhere. Oh, Michael, you're on mute. Oh, yeah, good. So if you've been working with me for a while, I've probably taught you many different ways to add variety to your writing. But it's often difficult. Just because you learn it once doesn't mean you are always going to be implementing it. So that's what we're going to be practicing today. Now, I wrote a little paragraph here for you. Oh, whoops. Kayla's in the waiting room. Let's get Kayla in here. Hi, Kayla. Sorry, you were probably in the waiting room for a little while. I didn't notice you were there. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, so I have a paragraph here. I wrote this, but I wrote it with the help of ChatGPT. I wanted to see if ChatGPT could write me a paragraph where every single sentence starts with the subject. Yes, I use ChatGPT. I think it's fine to use it if you cite your source. Okay, so this is what ChatGPT said to us. Emily walked through the park. Her father sat on a bench with his book. They smiled at each other as their paths crossed. It felt like a perfect spring day, with the sun shining brightly overhead. Everyone seemed to be in a good mood. Okay, then I wrote this last part. Emily wanted to go to the ice cream store, but her father said no. Her father didn't like the idea of her eating sweet treats. Emily cried all the way home. We all know an Emily just like this, don't we? Okay, so what's going on here? The question is, how many sentences in the paragraph to the right begin with the actual subject? The subject is either a noun, proper noun, or pronoun. Well, trick question, it's every sentence. Emily, her father, they, it, everyone, blah, 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 blah. Now, does that mean this isn't a good paragraph? I don't know. I'll let you judge. Is ChatGPT a great writer? Yeah, they're not that bad actually. There's kind of some creativity in there. And the only problem is that it just seems to be lacking a wee bit of variety. And maybe you wouldn't even have known that if I didn't point it out. Or maybe you would. Would you have read this and be like, ew, they're starting every sentence with the subject? Probably not, because that's what seasoned writers do. That's what people who have been writing for a really long time, they look for these kinds of things. But it's possible that you might not have even noticed. Hey, maybe you like this kind of writing. But in order to advance, become more sophisticated, and again, get your own style so that you don't sound exactly like ChatGPT, we are going to learn different ways that you can start your sentences, not just with the subject. Okay, this is titled boredom. You can see how this might get boring for your readers if you do the same subject or if you do a subject for every single sentence. So we're going to try to switch that up, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't ever start with the subject. No, 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 no. That's not what I'm saying. Please start your sentences with subjects. Many of your sentences, even most of your sentences, can start with subjects. It just means you want to be careful. You want to be aware. You want to be conscious of not doing it for every sentence. Maybe if your last 4 sentences have started with subjects, you can start to notice that pattern and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to do something different for this next one. I'm going to surprise my reader. And who doesn't love a good surprise? So there's 5 ways we're going to add variety to the beginning of your sentences today. You guys are going to be practicing this, so I hope you are ready. Maybe you guys are getting some PTSD from seeing these because I probably have taught you some of these. But so the first way is we're going to begin with a subordinating conjunction, then with a participial or adjective phrase, then with a transition word or phrase, then with an analytical adverb that ends in ly, and then we're going to try with prepositional phrases. So everybody meet me on the Google Classroom, and I'll show you exactly how we're going to do this. Chloe, I actually have a different document for you because I know that maybe the classroom might be tough. So Chloe, I'm going to send you something in the mail, in your email. So Chloe, if you get that email, can you just type in the chat that you've received it? Okay, now for those of you who do have access to the Google Classroom, in the classwork, there is a document called Beginning Sentences with More Variety. I'll show you for all those of you watching this recording. If you go to the classwork, there's this topic, this topic, this topic. The topic is called Activities. And here is the document, Beginning Sentences with Variety. Now you might be freaking out. You're like, oh my God. Oh no, there's so much. But if we don't finish all of it, it's okay. I just wanted to make sure we have enough to be able to do enough practice today. So, like I promised you, our first practice is going to be with creating adverb clauses in order to make complex sentences. Now, I'm not going to get into what's a complex sentence, what's an adverb clause, blah, 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 blah. All I'm going to tell you is that adverb clauses begin with something called subordinating conjunctions. This might be very triggering for some of you. I know I just did this with you recently, but look at these. This is a list of typical subordinating conjunctions that you use to begin a complex sentence. Complex sentences are great because it allows you to put 2 clauses together, a dependent and an independent, making sure you're adding more variety and detail to your writing. So what are you going to do? Well, instead of starting with the subject, Emily loves cookies. That's an example sentence. What I would do is I was going to say, while Emily loves cookies, she decided to bake a cake today. Okay, so I just transformed this smaller sentence, smaller, simple sentence that lacks a little bit of detail into a complex sentence that has two clauses, that adds more detail, and that there's even a relationship between the two clauses. One is the cause or the effect of the other. And when you have these complex relationships, your writing becomes more complex as well. So now it's not like you've never written these sentences before. I'm not introducing you to this kind of sentence. You probably write these all the time. The idea is being conscious. Do you know that you're writing a complex sentence? Do you know that when you have written 5 sentences with a subject, that maybe you could switch it up and write with an adverb clause? So what I'm going to have you guys do is you're going to write 5 sentences that don't begin with a subject. They must begin with a subordinating conjunction. This is not going to be difficult. Again, I'm just trying to wire your brain to be more aware of the patterns that are created in each sentence of your writing. Let me share my screen one more time. Everybody, this is for people who are watching the recording. However, you can just follow along on your own screen. So, this one's a little bit harder if you aren't sure what a participle is. But it'll be easy. It'll be easy. It will be easy once I explain it. Okay, so instead of beginning with a subordinating conjunction, we're going to begin with something called a participial phrase or an adjective phrase. I'll tell you the difference between the two. Well, actually, a participial phrase is a type of adjective phrase, but there's 2 kinds you can do. So what you do is you take a verb, any verb in the world. Let's say the verb to cry. And what you do is you add ing to the end of that verb. So cry becomes crying. And then you add a phrase after it that gives a little bit more description. For example, in the corner. And then you put a comma. And then you put the subject who is crying. That's a participial phrase. Now, if it sounds complicated, don't worry, I'll give you some more examples. If it sounds easy, great. But the idea is that the narrator is the subject. So the whole sentence could have been, the narrator reacts adversely to her mother's demands. But I wanted to add a little more detail. I wanted to create some variety. So what I did was I added this phrase that's describing what the narrator is doing, but it's really an adjective describing the narrator. Which narrator? The one who's crying in the corner. Crying in the corner, the narrator reacts adversely. So you see, I didn't start with the subject. I started with an adjective phrase that starts with a participle, which is a verb, add ing. You guys get the idea. I'll read the next one. Refusing to believe in her mother's strange cultural ideas, the narrator decides to retaliate. Wow, so I don't have the subject until here. That's pretty cool. So what I did was I took a participle, I took the verb to refuse, turned it into ing, refusing, and then I added a bunch of info just to make it more unique and detailed. And then I put the subject. It's pretty easy. Now you can do the present participle where you add ing, or you could take the past participle of a verb where you add ed. For example, exhausted from a long day at work, Miss Linnea plopped on the bed. So exhausted comes from the verb to exhaust, and it's describing Miss Linnea. Miss Linnea is the subject, but I don't introduce Miss Linnea until after my phrase here. Okay, cool. Now, if you don't want to take a verb, you can just use any old adjective. For example, deaf to any new notions about personal freedom, the mother tries to control her daughter. If you've read the Joy Luck Club, I took all of these. These are all describing the Joy Luck Club. Tanisha, I think you might have read it, that story. So this might be a reminder. But so you can either take a participle, which is a verb, or you can just do any old adjective. Okay. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Trying to be quick here. Your turn. It's your turn now. To write 5 sentences. I'm going to stop sharing so I can come take a look at all of yours. So scrolling down, page number 3. You guys actually do this a lot. But are you conscious of when you're doing it? Are you making sure that you're going back when you're editing and adding these kinds of things to the beginning of your sentences? Now, the hard part about this is that you will need a sentence before it in order for it to make sense. Because starting with a sentence with however is kind of confusing. So these are all words that you'll use for argumentation, words that help show your reader the flow and logic of your argument. Where are you going to next? What kind of point are you trying to make? So for however, I might do something like this. I love pizza. However, tonight I decided to order pasta. Your guys' sentences are much better than mine. But anyway, this is what I want you to do. You have to put a sentence before it, or else it's hard to see what the relationship is between the two sentences. So you get to choose whatever you want from here. All I ask is that you put a sentence before it. It can be very short, just like mine. I love pizza. And then you can start your sentence with the transition word. And then you can have your subject. For example, I is the subject of this sentence. Okay, good luck. Don't forget your sentence that comes before it. Adverbs, 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 adverbs. So in the first exercise we did, we were writing with adverb clauses. That means we did an entire clause that acted like an adverb. However, for this one, you're literally just starting with one adverb. All of these end in ly. However, there are adverbs that don't end in ly. So if you find one, great. If you want to, though, you can use one of these that I've chosen. The idea is that the adverb should add something analytical. It should add something in which you're trying to get a little bit more in depth about the situation. So, for example, I said here, if I read this sentence without the adverb, the mother wants only the best for her daughter. What a great sentence. Clean, makes sense. But if I wanted to add some of my own voice, I might add an adverb that shows my point of view, the writer. Understandably, the mother wants only the best for her daughter. Understandably. I mean, who wouldn't? So just adding this gives like almost a little bit more of a voice to you as a writer. Now, I could have just said, the daughter can't support being told what to do. But I wanted to add this as if I was going off the previous sentence. Inversely, which kind of means on the other hand, inversely, the opposite. The daughter can't support being told what to do. So it just adds that extra little oomph of analysis, like you, the writer, are analyzing the actions of the people you're writing about. Pretty cool. Okay, so maybe it's a little tough. You guys get to decide. Do you want to put a sentence before it and then start with the analytical adverb? You don't have to. If you want to, you can just make up anything. Like, ironically, my brother was really nice today. That you could just say something like that. By the way, these are not the only adverbs you can use. If you come up with any old adverb that starts with ly, I'll allow it. The next one is all about prepositional phrases. What's a preposition? Let's get into that. You guys probably all remember, but if you need a little bit of a wee bit of a refresher, a preposition is a word that connects two other words in the sentence together. So common prepositions tell us where something happened, where something is located, when something happened, why something happened. Okay, so for example, at midnight, I ate a cookie. At midnight tells you where. The book is under the table. Book, table, what's the relationship between them? Well, we put a preposition in there, under, to tell you how those words are connected. So it's a great way to switch up the structure of your sentences. So easy. Instead of saying the author suggests that cultures can be bridged, why not add a little preposition before it? In this way, this shows that this person was actually relating this sentence to some sentence that came before it. Hey, that's called flow. Flow. When you're referring back to a previous sentence. That's cool. Or just any old preposition. So instead of saying the mother only wants the best for her daughter, in her defense, or at the height of her fame, Shirley Temple was only 5 years old. Now, you very well could have said Shirley Temple was only 5 years old at the height of her fame. Totally would make sense. But if you put it at the beginning of the sentence, it just surprises your reader a little bit. It switches up the monotony of always starting with a subject. By the end of the story, the mother-daughter feud does get resolved. Okay, so I've given you tons of prepositions, and there's many more. You can use whatever you want. You can say something very simple like, in the kitchen, I made bread. Easy peasy. So go ahead and do your best with the prepositional phrases. So on your same doc, just go to the bottom, all the way to the bottom. I want you to create a beautiful paragraph. And your paragraph is going to be like a wave. So it's not going to be like a flat line where every sentence starts with a subject. You're going to have some that start with a subject, and then you're going to switch it up, then it's going to come back to subject, then it's going to go up and back, and that's how we create flow and rhythm. So as this shows, I don't want you to write sentences that don't begin with a subject. I'd love for you to continue writing sentences that begin with subjects. So you have to have a story. Maybe, and don't do it about Emily and her cookies. Do something different, anything that comes to your mind. Your mini story must have 8 sentences, and it has to follow this exact order. The first sentence begins with a subject, and then you start to do some of the things we practiced: adverb clause, participial phrase, then another sentence that begins with a subject, then a prep phrase, then a transition word, then another sentence that begins with a subject, then you end with a sentence that begins with an analytical adverb. So I'm going to leave this up here so that you guys can write your story.